Good afternoon and welcome to NYFP. In midday trade on this Monday morning, the major stock averages have paired earlier session losses and are only fractionally lower. Joining me now is Peter Cardillo of Rockwell Global Capital. Peter, good afternoon and thanks for joining me today.
Good to be back.
Well, we came back from the weekend. The Dow fell by as much as 100 points at the open, but now we're seeing those losses being pared back. Of course, all eyes have been on Cyprus this morning after the weekend developments. Now, as more developments come out regarding the EU bailout plan and we hear about what's happening potentially to the depositors, we have to wait for the Parliament vote, which will be taking place tomorrow. So what is your initial reaction?
I think this was just an excuse. The situation in Cyprus is not a situation that can really impact the Eurozone to the point where it would renew a full-blown crisis again. I think the fact that they're trying to limit the small investors from paying a higher tax is not really all that negative. In fact, it's probably a plus. One of the biggest problems that Europe is probably facing or could face is social unrest really heating up. And so if you continue to penalize the small investors either by raising taxes or by continuing to have layoffs throughout Europe, you're going to have social unrest, and that's going to be a real negative, because obviously when you have social unrest, what does that do? It sort of hinders your capability of producing. So your performance in terms of economic activity is going to dwindle even further. So I kind of think what we're seeing in the marketplace today is just an adjustment to the options expirations. The market has been very strong, and as you know, I said it needed to pull back a bit. And so I think the fact that we opened up lower today and perhaps maybe there's some sort of a rally going now suggests that maybe the next day or two we can see markets that are going to probably stay in the red until we get the FMOC announcement.
And Peter, you bring up a lot of important points there. The economic output of Cyprus is small compared to other nations in the Eurozone. And also there seemed to be initial surprise in terms of the government of Cyprus going after small depositors versus just bondholders. But in the overall picture, there has been some focus about Russian institutions and Russian investors in Cyprus. So what do you make of some of those comments?
Well, that again, I was just going to say, Cyprus, sometimes can be compared to like Switzerland and once even Lebanon, where the very wealthy used to deposit their monies and whatnot. And so the safe haven tax evaders of whatever nation we can refer to, could have a bit of a problem here, and it could mean economic decay for the island. But again, I think that brings us to another question. Well, where do the tax evaders go? And so there's basically very little places they can go to. So I'm not really sure that's going to be a factor here. But of course, it's disturbing. And, and again, what happened over the weekend in Cyprus just reminds us that Europe is going to have its bumps going along the way, and that, the crisis has certainly not been totally solved, and no one ever suggested that it was. So, but is it going to worsen? I think that's what we have to focus on, and my guess is that it's not going to worsen.
And Peter, the Eurozone still has a lot of kinks to work out. But here in the U.S., as you mentioned, we do get the two-day FOMC meeting, which will be kicking off tomorrow. Now, that concludes on Wednesday afternoon with the announcement as well as Bernanke's press conference. We also get a slew of housing figures out later this week. We had the NAHB Housing Market Index this morning, and it did come in on the downside. But in terms of fundamentals, what else will you be watching? Well,
I think the key to this week's trading is probably going to be the leading indicators in terms of economic data, but Mr. Bernanke, what he says is going to be very important in his press conference, and of course the Fed statement. I don't expect them to cut short any of the stimulants, and I don't think they're going to hint towards that. And I don't even think there's a possibility that they may talk about readjusting their balance sheet at any time soon. So I think basically cheap money stays around for a bit longer, and that, you know, as I've said many times before, that's a strong drug for the stock market.
Well, Peter, you'll join me on Friday afternoon, so we'll see how this Cyprus deal plays out and what happens after the Fed meeting. Thanks for joining me on this Monday, Peter.
My pleasure.